One Instagram post, 2 comments, and suddenly the most famous player in women's basketball wasn't talking about a game at all. When former Iowa teammate Gabby Marshall announced her engagement, Caitlin Clark didn't wait for a quiet moment or a polished statement. She showed up in the comments within minutes, emojis and all, like any other excited friend. The reaction went viral instantly, but the real story goes back years, to a championship backcourt, 2 completely different life paths after college.
Our time before we all leave for college was going to be fun.
But playing with 20 of the best high school seniors in the country never happened.
And a twist of fate that's about to make these 2 friends neighbors again in Indianapolis. So let's discuss these things in this video, starting with the moment it all began. The comment that stopped the internet. It started the way most milestone announcements do now, with a single Instagram post. Gabby Marshall, the steady defensive presence who once anchored Iowa's backcourt alongside Caitlin Clark, shared a series of photos capturing the moment her now fiancé, Spencer Toro, proposed. Her caption read simply, 2/18/26, we're engaged, so excited for this next chapter of our lives, and we've got a new friend to join us for the ride. It was warm, personal, and exactly the kind of post that usually stays within a circle of close friends and family, until the comments started rolling in. Why did this particular engagement post travel so far beyond Marshall's own followers? Because of who showed up first. Caitlin Clark, the same Caitlin Clark filling arenas for the Indiana Fever, the same Caitlin Clark whose every public move gets dissected by millions, left 2 comments within minutes of the post going up. The first read, "Let's Ray G," followed by a string of heart emojis. The second, simpler and just as sincere, "Congrats, sista." 2 short comments, no press release, no staged photo opportunity, just an instant, unfiltered reaction from someone whose schedule rarely allows for unfiltered anything. What makes a reaction like this spread the way it did? Sports media outlets picked it up almost immediately. Athlon Sports, Essentially Sports, Sportskeeda, Times of India, all running versions of the same story, all framing it the same way. This was not basketball news. It was friendship news, dressed up as basketball news, and audiences could not look away. Clips of Clark's comments circulated across social platforms, often paired with archival footage of the 2 of them on the Iowa bench together. The kind of pairing that practically wrote its own caption. For a player whose every public appearance is scrutinized for hints of rivalry, controversy, or pressure, this was something rarer, a moment that asked nothing of Clark except to be happy for someone she loves, and she delivered it without hesitation. There is something worth sitting with here before moving forward. Clark did not wait for a quiet moment, a scheduled break, or a public relations-approved response. She reacted the way anyone would react to a close friend's engagement, immediately, emotionally, without filtering herself for an audience. That instinct, more than the words themselves, is what fans latched onto. In a sports landscape saturated with curated statements and managed images, 2 emoji-filled comments felt almost startlingly real. Context matters here too. Most of the headlines built around Caitlin Clark this year have centered on competition, rivalries, physical play, officiating disputes, the pressure of carrying a league's commercial growth on her shoulders. Against that backdrop, a story with 0 competitive stakes felt almost like relief, both for Clark and for the audience watching her.
She got to go, a teammate at Iowa, made the trek here to Indianapolis.
There was nothing to defend, nothing to prove, no statement to carefully word for reporters. Just a friend, reacting to a friend's happiness, in real time. Fans noticed the timing too. Clark's comments appeared within minutes of Marshall's post going live, not hours later after a publicist had time to review anything. That immediacy became part of the appeal. Anyone who has ever celebrated a friend's engagement recognizes the instinct. You do not wait, you do not plan your wording, you simply react. Seeing one of the most recognizable athletes in the world do exactly that, with the same unfiltered enthusiasm as anyone else, closed the distance between Clark the superstar and Clark the former teammate in a way few other moments this year have managed. Fans picked apart the smallest details the way only true fans can, pointing out that the all-cap spelling, the stretched-out vowels in "Let's Ray-G," and the string of heart emojis all match the exact energy Clark has shown in countless candid, off-court moments over the years. This was not a one-off burst of excitement out of character for her. It was simply the most public version yet of a personality fans had already glimpsed in post-game interviews, locker room celebrations, and behind-the-scenes content. Proof, in the eyes of many, that the version of Clark people see celebrating with friends online is the same one her teammates have always known. It is also worth noting how quickly the moment crossed over from women's basketball coverage into general sports and entertainment news. Stories about Clark typically stay within basketball-specific outlets, unless something extraordinary happens: a record, a controversy, a milestone. This engagement reaction crossed that line within a single news cycle, picked up by entertainment-adjacent outlets that rarely cover women's college basketball reunions at all. That crossover, more than anything else, signaled just how much Clark's personal life has become its own category of public interest, separate from anything happening on a basketball court. The championship bond. To understand why this reaction carried so much weight, you have to go back to where the friendship was built. Not in a press conference, but on the floor of Carver Hawkeye Arena, where Clark and Marshall shared a backcourt for years. Marshall was never the headline grabber. She was the steady, reliable presence.
The Cincinnati kid first stepped on the floor at Carver, and since the start of her second season, Gabby has started nearly every single game for Iowa.
The kind of teammate who guards the toughest assignment, knocks down open shots, and rarely needs the spotlight to matter. Alongside Clark's record-breaking scoring seasons, Marshall provided exactly the kind of stability a team chasing championships needs. Together, they helped guide Iowa to back-to-back national championship game appearances in 2023 and 2024, a stretch that turned the Hawkeyes into the most-watched program in women's college basketball history. Can a teammate who never led the box score still shape a legacy? Anyone who watched those Iowa teams closely already knows the answer. Marshall's defense on opposing guards, her willingness to take on physical matchups so Clark could operate freely, and her composure in high-pressure moments were quietly essential to everything Iowa accomplished during those two unforgettable runs. Championship runs build a particular kind of closeness that ordinary seasons do not. Long bus rides, shared hotel rooms before Final Four games, the specific exhaustion of a season stretching deep into April. These are the conditions that turn teammates into family. Clark has spoken before, in various interviews over the years, about how much those Iowa teams meant to her. Not just the records or the trophies, but the people she shared the experience with. Marshall was one of the central figures in that experience, present for nearly every major moment of Clark's college career. That kind of shared history does not fade simply because one player becomes one of the most famous athletes on the planet. If anything, it becomes more meaningful, a reminder for both women of who was there before the fame arrived. Those two championship seasons did more than build a friendship. They built an entire era of women's college basketball the sport had never seen before. Iowa's games during that stretch drew television audiences that rivaled major men's broadcasts. Arenas around the country sold out specifically because Iowa was coming to town, and the Hawkeyes became, almost overnight, the most discussed program in the sport. Living through that level of sudden, overwhelming attention together, the kind few college athletes ever experience, tends to forge bonds an ordinary season simply cannot replicate. Beyond the box scores, there is a quieter dimension to team chemistry that rarely gets discussed publicly. The inside jokes, the pregame rituals, the specific way a group of young women learns to trust each other under pressure. Programs that reach back-to-back championship games do not get there on talent alone. They get there because the people in the locker room genuinely care about each other, push each other, and show up for one another in ways that rarely make it onto a broadcast. Marshall's engagement announcement and the flood of former teammates in her comments offered a small, public glimpse of a closeness that had clearly been building, mostly unseen, for years. Marshall's specific role on those Iowa teams deserves more credit than it typically receives.
Gabby Marshall has struggled a little bit this season shooting.
While Clark drew double teams and broke scoring records, someone still had to guard the opposing team's best perimeter player, night after night, often without the benefit of resting on offense first. That responsibility fell repeatedly to Marshall. It is exactly the kind of contribution that rarely shows up in a highlight reel, but matters enormously to a team actually trying to win games in March and April. And it is exactly why this friendship, built through years of shared sacrifice rather than shared headlines, meant enough to Clark that she showed up first, loudest and most sincerely, the moment Marshall's happiness became public. The friendship that outlasted basketball. While Clark's path led to the NBA, record contracts, and a national spotlight that rarely dims, Marshall chose something different. After her college career ended, she did not enter the 1BA draft. Instead, she pursued a master's degree at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, stepping away from competitive basketball to focus on her academics and the next phase of her life. It was a decision that received far less attention than Clark's professional debut, but one that speaks just as clearly to who Marshall is. Why does a decision like this matter to a story about an engagement announcement? Because it reframes the entire friendship. Clark and Marshall did not stay close because their careers kept intersecting. They stayed close despite their paths diverging almost completely the moment college ended. One went on to fill professional arenas. The other built a life rooted in academics, away from cameras and box scores entirely. The friendship that produced 2 viral comments on an engagement post survived a complete change in both of their day-to-day lives. There is a particular kind of respect in staying present for someone whose life looks nothing like yours anymore. Clark's calendar, by any reasonable measure, is one of the busiest in professional sports. Practices, games, appearances, a level of public attention that rarely allows for quiet, unscheduled time. And yet, within minutes of Marshall's post going live, Clark found the time to respond, not with a generic congratulations, but with the kind of specific, personal language reserved for someone who actually knows you. That detail tends to get lost in coverage, focused purely on the virality of the moment, but it may be the most telling part of the entire story. There is a broader lesson buried inside Marshall's decision, one that extends well beyond basketball. Not every elite athlete is meant to continue at the professional level, and choosing not to is rarely treated with the same respect as choosing to go pro. Marshall's decision to step away from competitive basketball after college and pursue graduate studies
Still started 120 games over the last 4 seasons.
represents a different kind of success story, one built around personal clarity rather than continued competition. Should that kind of choice get less attention simply because it does not come with a draft night or a rookie contract? The warmth surrounding her engagement announcement suggests that, at least among the people who knew her best, the answer is clearly no. Clark's own path could not have looked more different. By the time Marshall was settling into life at Chapel Hill, Clark was adjusting to life as the most watched rookie in 1BA history, with a schedule built almost entirely around basketball, travel, and public appearances. 2 former teammates, moving in almost opposite directions the moment college ended, somehow managed to stay close enough that one of them would be among the very first people to comment on the other's engagement. That is not something that happens by accident. It happens because the friendship itself was never dependent on both of them staying on the same path. There is also a quiet vulnerability in stepping away from a sport that defines so much of your identity for the better part of a decade, even when that decision is entirely your own. College athletics offers structure, routine, and an automatic community. Leaving it behind, however willingly, means rebuilding all of that from scratch. Marshall's transition into graduate school, away from cameras and competition, was its own kind of courage. The fact that her former teammates, and especially Clark, whose own path could not have pulled her further in the opposite direction, remained close throughout that transition, speaks to a friendship built on more than shared jerseys. More than former teammates, Clark was far from the only former teammate to show up in the comments. Other Hawkeyes who shared the floor with both women during those championship seasons flooded the post with their own messages, turning Marshall's announcement into something closer to a reunion than a simple congratulations thread. Is that kind of collective outpouring something that happens for every college athlete who announces an engagement? Rarely at this scale. What made this particular moment resonate so widely was the contrast between Clark's massive public profile and the genuine, almost ordinary warmth of her response. Proof that fame had not replaced the relationships that existed before it. There is a tendency, in modern sports media, to treat famous athletes as characters rather than people, defined entirely by statistics, controversies, and highlight reels. Moments like this push back against that flattening. Clark's reaction to Marshall's engagement did not involve a single basketball reference. It was simply one friend celebrating another, in the same way millions of people celebrate the people they love every day. Except this time, millions of people happened to be watching. Outlets covering the story repeatedly used the word sisterhood to describe the bond visible in the comments, and it is not difficult to understand why. Teams that go through what that Iowa roster went through, 2 national championship game runs, record-breaking attention, the specific pressure of representing a program suddenly thrust into the national spotlight, tend to produce relationships that look less like typical teammates and more like family. Years after graduation, after the jerseys are retired and the rosters move on to entirely different lives, that closeness tends to resurface exactly at moments like this. Engagements, weddings, major life milestones. When the people who shared those formative years show up first, loudest, and most sincerely. Part of why this story traveled so far has less to do with Clark and Marshall specifically, and more to do with what audiences are increasingly drawn to in an era of carefully managed athlete branding. Fans have grown accustomed to seeing professional athletes through the filter of sponsorship deals, scripted interviews, and social media teams managing every public word. A genuine, off-the-cuff comment, typos and emoji spam included, stands out precisely because it is so rare. It reads as proof that the person behind the brand is still, in fact, a person. There is a reason moments like this consistently outperform expectations in terms of audience reach, even without any built-in controversy to drive clicks. People do not just want to watch their favorite athletes compete. They want to feel like they know them. A genuine display of loyalty, especially from someone as publicly scrutinized as Clark, satisfies that desire in a way that no highlight package ever could. It transforms her, briefly, from an athlete being watched into a person being understood, and audiences consistently reward that shift with exactly the kind of engagement this story received. Coming home to Indianapolis. Perhaps the most fitting detail in the entire story is where Marshall and Turo plan to settle down. Following Turo's new job opportunity, the couple is relocating to Indianapolis, the same city where Clark now plays for the Indiana Fever. The move itself has nothing to do with Clark or basketball at all. It is entirely about Turo's career. But the outcome carries a kind of symbolism that is hard to ignore. The 2 former Iowa teammates, who built their friendship hundreds of miles away in Iowa City, will soon be neighbors again, almost by chance, in the city Clark now calls home. Does proximity actually deepen a friendship that has already survived distance, divergent careers, and years apart? It certainly does not hurt. For Clark, whose life in Indianapolis revolves heavily around the demands of a WNBA season, having a close friend from her Iowa years nearby offers something increasingly rare in her current life. A connection untouched by basketball, media obligations, or public expectation. For Marshall, beginning a new chapter in a new city, having a familiar, supportive presence already there may make the transition feel a little less unfamiliar. The story of Gabby Marshall's engagement, on the surface, has nothing to do with professional basketball at all. No game was played, no statistic was recorded, and yet it became one of the most widely shared, warmly received Caitlin Clark stories in recent memory. That says something important about what fans actually want from the athletes they follow. Not every viral moment needs controversy, competition, or stakes. Sometimes the most memorable ones are simply proof that the person performing under bright lights every night is, underneath all of it, still showing up for the people who knew her first. It is easy to reduce Caitlin Clark's public image to box scores, endorsement deals, and the relentless media cycle surrounding the NBA's biggest draw. This story offers a necessary counterweight to that. Underneath the records and the headlines is someone who still celebrates her friends the way anyone would, loudly, immediately, without a script. Marshall's engagement gave the public a small window into that part of her life, and judging by how widely the story spread, audiences were more than ready to see it. Looking ahead, there is no indication of exactly when Marshall and Turo plan to make the move official, or what their life in Indianapolis will look like once they arrive. What is already clear, based on everything that unfolded the moment the engagement went public, is that whenever Marshall does settle into her new city, she will not be starting over entirely alone. A familiar face, one who shared some of the most demanding and rewarding years of her life, will already be there, still cheering, still showing up, just as she did the moment the announcement first appeared online. For a fan base that has spent the better part of 3 years watching Clark navigate intense scrutiny, physical play, and a relentless news cycle built around her every move, stories like this one offer something different to hold on to. Not every chapter of her story has to be about pressure or performance. Some of it, clearly, is still about showing up for the people who knew her first. And that, more than any statistic, may be the most lasting part of her legacy. 2 comments, a handful of emojis, and a friendship fame never managed to touch. That's the real story behind Caitlin Clark's reaction to Gabby Marshall's engagement. Not a championship banner or a record book, but proof that the people who knew her before any of that still come first. A backcourt partnership, 2 different paths after college, and now a quiet reunion waiting in Indianapolis. Sometimes the most meaningful stories aren't the ones with the biggest stakes. They're the ones that remind you who someone really is underneath the spotlight. If this story made you smile, tell us your favorite part in the comments. Like this video if you love seeing Clark's genuine side. And subscribe for more.